America's robust sanctions regime on Iran and delivered on President Biden's commitment.
You will forever be known as Bloody Blinken, Secretary of Genocide. You have the blood of hundreds of thousands of innocent people on your hands. We have spent a
Thank you. I
year-
respect your views. Over a dozen trips to the region since October 7th. Is that hard to achieve? Yes. Peace in the region always has been.
For over 450 days, Israel has committed genocide against the Palestinian people. We have sent over $25 billion to Israel in the past year. That's $70 of all of our money. $70 that we are using to send weapons, send bombs, and genocide. Blinken, you lied on May 10th to Congress. You lied. ProPublica looked it up, May 10th.
Good morning, everyone. And Fred, to you, thank you for that incredibly generous introduction. But thank you especially for your leadership of this council over nearly 2 decades. It's wonderful to be with you today. It's wonderful to be in this extraordinary new location. Back in the early 1960s, leading diplomats, public intellectuals, philanthropists, and others came together in Washington to create an organization that was founded on meeting the challenges of an increasingly interdependent world. In attendance, among others, Secretary of State Dean Rusk, who was blunt about what he thought would be most useful for this council. The department is hoping for initiative, research, and if necessary, the boxing of State Department ears. That's exactly what the council's delivered for more than 6.5 decades, starting with the transatlantic relationship, growing to incorporate expertise on other parts of the world, including the region that I want to talk about today, the Middle East. Now, from the outset, the Biden administration's primary goal in the Middle East was not to repeat the blunder of years past of trying to transform its governments or its societies, but rather to transform relations with, between, and among U.S. partners in the region. That's because we saw a more integrated region as more likely to be stable and secure, to deliver economic opportunity for its people, to find solutions to shared challenges from pandemics and terrorism to infrastructure and energy needs. A more integrated region is also in a stronger position to prevent any one of its neighbors from dominating the others, or any outside country from dominating the region, to deter aggression and nuclear proliferation, to avert, to de-escalate, to end conflict through diplomacy. We moved swiftly to pursue this vision. We deepened and broadened the Abraham Accords. We spearheaded new coalitions like I2U2, bringing together India, Israel, the United Arab Emirates, and the United States to tackle shared challenges. We announced a groundbreaking economic corridor connecting India, the Middle East, and Europe. We worked with the UN to mediate a truce in Yemen. We continued to lead and strengthen an 87-nation counter-ISIS coalition. In the wake of the Trump administration's unilateral and misguided exit from the Iran nuclear deal, we made clear there was a path to mutual return to compliance if Tehran was willing to take the steps necessary. At the same time, we strengthened America's robust sanctions regime on Iran and delivered on President Biden's commitment.
You will forever be known as Bloody Blinken, Secretary of Genocide. You have the blood of hundreds of thousands of innocent people on your hands. We have spent a
Thank you. I
year,
respect your views. Please allow me to share mine. Thank you.
Appeal to your humanity in front of your house. We bring you letters. We've held car rallies. The blood of innocent civilians, of children, is on your hands. We will not forget. We will not forget. We will hold you accountable. We will hold you accountable. Bloody Blinken, Secretary of Genocide. Shame on you. Shame on you.
So to continue. At the same time, we strengthened America's robust sanctions regime on Iran and delivered on President Biden's commitment that Iran would not obtain a nuclear weapon on his watch. Finally, we made significant progress toward a comprehensive agreement that would strengthen our strategic partnership with Saudi Arabia and normalize relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel. On October 10th, 2023, I was scheduled to travel to Israel and Saudi Arabia to help close remaining gaps in the normalization deal, and in particular, to pursue agreement on one of its essential components, a credible pathway to a Palestinian state with ironclad security guarantees for Israel. But on October 7th, Hamas attacked Israel, unleashing the deadliest days for Jews since the Holocaust. Hamas killed more than 1,200 men, women, and children, torturing, maiming, sexually assaulting many of its victims. The overwhelming majority of Hamas's victims were civilians. They included citizens from more than 30 countries, among them 46 Americans. Hamas also took more than 250 people hostage, including some 30 children and 12 Americans. 7 of those Americans remain hostage to this day. Now, the timing of Hamas's attack was no accident. Israel's growing integration in the region, the prospect of normalization with Saudi Arabia, posed an existential threat to Hamas's power, its ambitions to dominate the Palestinian political landscape, its raison d'etre, which is the rejection of 2 states and the destruction of Israel. As notes recovered from meetings of Hamas's top officials would later reveal, Hamas sought to spark a regional war that would derail this agreement, knowing that doing so would inflict immense suffering on civilians on all sides, including the Palestinian people whose interests they claim to represent. In the wake of the attack, President Biden made clear the United States' unwavering commitment to help Israel defend itself and prevent another October 7th. He asserted his determination to avert a broader regional conflict with all the death and destruction that would bring. He took immediate steps to deter further aggression and prevent the conflict from spreading, deploying 2 of our largest aircraft carrier battle groups, fighter jets, warships, a guided missile submarine, and troops to the region. And he pledged unrelenting efforts to secure the release of the hostages. He became the first U.S. president to travel to Israel in wartime, telling the Israeli people directly, "You are not alone." He reminded Israel that while the country had a right, indeed an obligation, to defend itself, how it did so mattered. It was imperative to protect civilians and provide them with humanitarian assistance. These are the goals that I've worked to advance over a dozen trips to the region since October 7th. All of this has been part of an all-of-administration effort, led by President Biden, including Jake Sullivan, Bill Burns, Lloyd Austin, Brett McGurk, Amos Hochstein, Barbara Leaf, and our diplomats across the region and around the globe. Now, more than 15 months later, Hamas's military and governance capacity has been decimated, and the masterminds behind the attack have been killed. Tehran is on its back foot. Its 2 missile attacks on Israel were thwarted by a coalition of regional partners that we assembled. Israel's response, which we played a central role in shaping, demolished Iran's air defenses, left Tehran's most sensitive military sites exposed and vulnerable, and sent a clear message of deterrence, while at the same time avoiding a dangerous escalatory cycle. Hezbollah, Iran's most powerful proxy, is a shadow of its former self. Its leadership eliminated. Its terrorist infrastructure of tunnels and weapons manufacturing ravaged. In Lebanon, Hezbollah's battered forces have retreated north of the Litani River as part of a U.S. brokered ceasefire agreement. After Iran spent decades pouring billions of dollars into propping up Assad's murderous machinery, the Assad regime has fallen, and Tehran has retreated from Syria. None of Assad's patrons, not Iran, not Russia, not Hezbollah, were in a position to save him this time. All were bogged down in crises of their own making, which the United States effectively exacerbated. Iran has lost its overland supply route to Hezbollah. Many of the Assad regime's bases, weapons factories, and weapons, including illegal chemical weapons, have been destroyed by Israel. It's not just what we achieved, but also what we prevented. When I traveled across the region the days after October 7th, I heard from partners a palpable sense of alarm that regional war was coming. The combination of American diplomatic and military action and assistance to preserve and strengthen Israel's deterrent helped prevent that from happening in the weeks after October 7th and at multiple charged moments since. America's allies and partners, particularly in the Middle East, have taken note of who they can rely on to stand by their friends and who they cannot. Which powers work to diffuse crises and which powers stand back and do nothing or make problems worse. The balance of power in the Middle East is shifting dramatically and not in the way Hamas and its backers hoped or planned. And yet, the region remains rife with risk, from Syria's fragile political transition to Iran's desperation to restore its deterrence with all that could imply for its nuclear ambitions, to the Houthis' ongoing attacks on Israel and international shipping, to a dearth of opportunity, the repression of dissent and human rights in several countries. What's more, while the strategic gains made over the last 15 months are real, they have come at tremendous and excruciating costs. For the families of the kibbutzim, the concert goers, the children, the soldiers killed on October 7th attack, unfathomable grief persists. For those with loved ones and friends still being held hostage, every day brings more anguish from not knowing if their loved ones are suffering or even alive. The ongoing humanitarian crisis in Gaza has inflicted immeasurable suffering on Palestinian civilians, children, women, men, trapped in a conflict they did not start and are powerless to stop. Tens of thousands of people killed in Gaza. Nearly the entire population has lost a loved one. Nearly the entire population is enduring hunger. Nearly the entire population, some 2 million people, has been displaced, many multiple times. Most have no home to go to, as so many homes in Gaza have been damaged or destroyed. Gaza is one of the most dangerous places in the world to be a child, to be a civilian, to be a journalist. And as always happens in conflicts, the more people suffer, the less they feel empathy for the suffering of those on the other side. Throughout the Arab and Muslim worlds, large majorities believe that October 7th didn't happen, or if it did, that it was a legitimate attack on Israel's military. In Israel, there is almost no reporting on the conditions in Gaza and what people there endure every day. This dehumanization is one of the greatest tragedies of the conflict. The late Cardinal Martini once spoke of our need to be able to experience shared sorrow. It helps us salvage from moments of loss and despair a sense of common humanity. Without it, we lose one of the most crucial foundations for reconciliation and eventually coexistence. For the United States, a country with unique global engagements and responsibilities, the conflict has put our personnel, our facilities, our assets at greater risk, stretched our force posture, stockpiles, and readiness. Terrorist groups are exploiting the crisis in Gaza to try to boost recruitment and foment anti-American sentiment. Autocrats have cynically used the conflict to justify their aggression and atrocities and to advance their efforts to challenge the international rules and principles that safeguard American interests and values. And of course, it's divided our communities, from college campuses to houses of worship to families. Given the costs, especially the human costs, we have a responsibility to ensure that the strategic gains of the last 15 months endure and lay the foundation for a better future. All too often in the Middle East, we've seen how the shoes of one dictator can be filled by another, or give way to conflict and chaos. How a nation can expel one outside power only to see another take its place. How stamping out one terrorist group can spawn even more lethal successors. So our imperative is not to turn back the clock to the way things were before October 7th. It's to forge a new reality for the Middle East in which all people are more secure, all can realize their national aspirations, all can live in peace. Is that hard to achieve? Yes. Peace in the region always has been.
For over 450 days, Israel has committed genocide against the Palestinian people. We have sent over $25 billion to Israel in the past year. That's $70 of all of our money. $70
Is it hard? Yes. Is it impossible? No. Is it necessary? Absolutely yes. And that's why we pursued 3 interrelated diplomatic goals: brokering an enduring solution to the Israel-Hezbollah conflict, ending the war in Gaza, normalizing relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia, which will provide Palestinians and Israelis with the incentives and reassurances that they need to achieve their long-sought national aspirations. Israel has lived for far too long with an unsustainable situation in its northern border. Hezbollah, a terrorist organization whose stated goals include the destruction of Israel, controlled large swaths of Lebanon's territory, including lands south of the Litani River, in violation of the UN resolution that ended the last war between Israel and Hezbollah. Land Hezbollah used, with Iran's support, to train fighters, to stockpile arms, to build weapons and tunnels, to carry out deadly attacks on Israel. Starting on October 7th, Hezbollah launched thousands of missiles at Israeli communities without provocation, pledging to continue its attacks until Israel ended its military operation in Gaza. Hezbollah's aggression has come at grave cost for Israelis and Lebanese people alike. Some 70,000 Israelis have been forced from their homes along Israel's northern border. In Lebanon, thousands have been killed, a quarter of Lebanon's population displaced. Our goal in seeking a cessation of hostilities was not merely to pause the fighting and avert a broader regional war. Rather, we aim to prevent Hezbollah from reconstituting itself in a way that can threaten Israel or continue to hold the Lebanese state and the Lebanese people hostage. And we wanted to create conditions allowing displaced Israeli and Lebanese families to return safely to their homes. The arrangement that we brokered together with France meets those benchmarks. It empowers the government of Lebanon to retake control of its territory. It provides Lebanon's economy and security forces with much needed aid and support. It preserves Israel's right to defend itself in accordance with international law. It achieves Israel's aim of delinking hostilities on its northern front from the war in Gaza. Just since the deal was signed, Israeli forces have started to withdraw from southern Lebanon. The Lebanese military is deployed in their place to ensure that remaining terrorist infrastructure is removed and Hezbollah does not return. The US and France are working hour by hour to monitor the agreement and to address violations. And now, just 6 weeks after the deal, Lebanon's parliament voted overwhelmingly to elect a new president, the first time the country has had a national leader in more than 2 years. Just yesterday, it elected a new prime minister. Both are important steps to becoming a secure, sovereign, and successful nation, and to meeting the needs of the Lebanese people. Second, we sought to end the war in Gaza in a way that will lay the foundation for enduring peace, as well as to advance the legitimate aspirations of Israelis for lasting security and Palestinians for an independent, viable state of their own. 1 month into the conflict, at a meeting of G7 foreign ministers in Tokyo, I outlined principles that the United States saw as essential to achieving these goals. The principles included a Gaza never again ruled by Hamas or used as a platform for terrorism or other violent attacks. New Palestinian-led governance, with Gaza united with the West Bank under the Palestinian Authority. No Israeli military occupation of Gaza or reduction of Gaza's territory. No attempt after the conflict to besiege or block it. And no forcible displacement of Gaza's population. These principles also called for establishing a sustained mechanism for Gaza's recovery and reconstruction, and for creating a pathway toward Israelis and Palestinians living side by side in states of their own, with equal measures of security, freedom, opportunity, and dignity. Now, we and our partners recognize that we wouldn't be able to achieve these goals overnight. The first step, we have long believed, is to achieve an initial ceasefire, 6 weeks, during which Israel and Hamas stop firing, Israeli forces pull back, hostages start to come home, Palestinian prisoners are released, humanitarian assistance surges into Gaza. It will also create space for finalizing a day-after plan to allow the full withdrawal of Israeli forces, to make the ceasefire permanent, and to bring the remaining hostages home. Once we assessed that Israel had achieved its main objective in Gaza of ensuring that Hamas was incapable of carrying out another October 7th, President Biden publicly set out his detailed ceasefire plan. We went around the world building support for the proposal. The UN Security Council swiftly adopted a resolution supporting it, with 14 members voting for it, not a single member voting against it. The Arab League, countries in the region and beyond, all affirmed their support. Hamas, the lone holdout, but now thoroughly isolated, finally accepted President Biden's framework. In the time since, we've worked relentlessly with Qatar and Egypt to negotiate the details of the agreement and its implementation. Now, at different moments, different parties have made it hard to finalize an agreement, or events have delayed or derailed its completion. For the past several months, Hamas has played the spoiler. But over the past several weeks, our intensive efforts have brought us to the brink of full and final agreement. On Sunday, the United States, Qatar, and Egypt put forward a final proposal. The ball is now in Hamas's court. If Hamas accepts, the deal is ready to be concluded and implemented. I believe we will get a ceasefire. And whether we get there in the remaining days of our administration or after January 20th, I believe the deal will follow closely the terms of the agreement that President Biden put forward last May and our administration rallied the world behind. Now, from the outset, we also recognized that we couldn't afford to wait until a ceasefire to plan for what would follow it. For many months, we've been working intensively with our partners to develop a detailed post-conflict plan that would allow Israel to fully withdraw from Gaza, prevent Hamas from filling back in, and provide for Gaza's governance, security, and reconstruction, drawing on the principles that I originally set out in Tokyo. We will hand off that plan to the Trump administration to carry forward. But let me share a few of its core elements this morning. We believe that the Palestinian Authority should invite international partners to help establish and run an interim administration with responsibility for key civil sectors in Gaza like banking, water, energy, health, civil coordination with Israel. The international community would provide funding, technical support, and oversight. The interim administration would include Palestinians from Gaza and representatives from the PA, selected following meaningful consultation with communities in Gaza, and would hand over complete responsibility to a fully reformed PA administration as soon as it's feasible. The administrators would operate in close cooperation with a senior UN official who should oversee the international stabilization and recovery effort. An interim security mission would be made up of members of partner nation security forces and vetted Palestinian personnel. Its responsibilities would include creating a secure environment for humanitarian and reconstruction efforts and ensuring border security, which is crucial to preventing smuggling that could allow Hamas to rebuild its military capacity. We would stand up a new initiative to train, to equip, to vet a PA-led security force for Gaza to focus on law and order and gradually take over for the interim security mission. These arrangements would be enshrined in a UN Security Council resolution. Some of our partners have already expressed their willingness to contribute troops and police for such a mission. But if, and only if, it is agreed that Gaza and the West Bank are reunified under a reformed PA as part of a pathway to an independent Palestinian state. And therein lies the rub. Reaching agreement will require all parties to summon the political will, to make hard decisions, to make hard compromises. Key regional and international actors will need to fully commit to supporting Palestinian-led governance and preventing Hamas's return. The PA will need to carry out swift, far-reaching reform to build more transparent, accountable governance, continuing a process that it began last year. Israel will have to accept reuniting Gaza and the West Bank under the leadership of a reformed PA. And all must embrace a time-bound, conditions-based path toward forming an independent Palestinian state. These principles are mutually reinforcing. Time-bound because no one will believe or accept an endless process. Palestinians need and deserve a clear and near horizon for political self-determination. Conditions-based because while Palestinians have a right to self-determination, with that right comes responsibility. No one should expect Israel to accept a Palestinian state that's led by Hamas or other extremists, that's militarized or has independent armed militia, that aligns with Iran or others who reject Israel's right to exist, that educates and preaches rejectionism, or that, unreformed, becomes a failed state. Israelis must decide what relationship they want with the Palestinians. That cannot be the illusion that Palestinians will accept being a non-people without national rights. 7 million Israeli Jews and some 5 million Palestinians are rooted in the same land. Neither is going anywhere.